I am Sharon Tompkins. I am the Vice President of Customer Solutions and Strategy. And at SoCalGas, we've been thinking about how it is we get from where we are today to a carbon neutral future by 2045, which is ultimately the objective that Governor Brown set out for us this fall, along with 100% clean electricity. And in thinking about it, we've come up with 3 questions that will need to be successfully addressed over the next couple of decades to really have a clean and sustainable future, as well as a thriving state of California where businesses and people can live and afford and enjoy all that is the California territory. So the first one is, how do we store it? We already, with our renewable solar and wind, have to curtail it or dump it at negative prices with what we have on the system today. We need to figure out ways to store that energy so that it can be used when people need it in the evenings or when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. And batteries is absolutely a part of the solution, but it's not the entire solution because it doesn't have the seasonal peak storage capacity that we need. So the next one is, how do we pay for it? How do we manage to keep the 39.5 million people in the state of California moving forward and being able to afford to live and work in this state? We have an incredibly rich state, both from an economics perspective, and we have an incredibly poor state, both from an economics perspective. How do we create a sustainable and affordable California, and how do we keep the businesses here so that we can generate the jobs? So that, is, in my mind, one of the most important things we have to think about, especially because energy and electricity, our energy costs are already high. And then finally, how do we get people to adopt it? We know in just the electrical vehicle sector that adoption by consumers on the electric vehicle is not what we'd hoped it would be. And there may be a lot of reasons for that, but it does say when you're asking consumers to do something affirmatively, they have to be willing to go about and do it. So how do we go about creating a scenario where people are willing to adopt it and that they're willing to make the changes necessary to get us to that carbon neutral future? So when we've been thinking about it, there we go. So much for remotes. They work like my remote at my house does. So when we've been thinking about it, first of all, if anyone tells you there is an easy answer to get to 2045, I would have to disagree with it. We've done a lot of the good work to get where we are today, but the next few decades is going to be really hard. So we need to all be working together to figure out how to maximize our energy resources. And as part of that, we see it's a suite of solutions. Solar and wind are absolutely a part of the solution. Batteries are absolutely a part of the solution. But for thermal loads, particularly in the housing stock where you have, at least in our service territory alone, 21 million customers and over 5.5 million meters, if you're going to switch out buildings, that's an awfully heavy lift to get consumers to switch out their homes from a dual fuel home to an all-electric home. And is there another pathway, is there a different pathway that you can get to that same environmental result without asking millions of consumers to change out and switch out their existing infrastructure? And that's where we think renewable natural gas comes into play. It plays in the transportation sector, but it can also really play in the building sector as well. Less than 20% of renewable natural gas in our system would be the equivalent of electrifying all buildings. And so that's a part of the solution. And then from a storage capacity, we've been thinking about and collaborating with our friends in Europe to look at power to gas technology. It's a simple technology in the sense of it takes excess electricity, it splits water, converts it into either hydrogen, or you can methanate it using excess CO2 and create methane. So those are some of the technologies we're interested in and we're pursuing aggressively at the gas company so that we can help California achieve its environmental goals. And with that, I'll turn it over.
Yeah, so really important, how do we pay for it, how storage fits, and renewable natural gas. So at some point, I'd love to hear from you what renewable natural gas is. Next up, I'd like to ask Trevor to come on up and talk a bit about the perspective from Woodstock, Ontario.
I'm going to talk about climate change. I don't like talking about climate change, but the first time I had to deal with it was prior to me becoming elected. I came home from work and my oldest child is sitting in the front room of the house in tears. I asked what was wrong. Daddy, today we learned about climate change. It's really bad. I said, yeah, it's a pretty big subject. Why are you so upset? Why are you crying? Daddy, cutting down trees is wrong. I came home and I looked at our house. It's made out of wood. We're bad people, Daddy. Wow. So I gathered all the children up and we went for a little nature hike on a piece of land not too far away from our house. That when the settlers first came to southwestern Ontario, it had no trees. Most of Ontario was covered in trees, but there was a small area, a ribbon of what would be like the prairies, grasses, and that's where settlers planted tobacco. We were the tobacco capital a long time ago. On that, friend, no, I'm not going to listen to you. No, I'm not ready yet. I still got to be right here. So I haven't got elected yet. I'll move a little. I'm out of view. I showed them trees that were planted by their grandfather on that farm, trees that were planted by myself when I was a teenager, and we walked and we talked about what sustainability was. And we talked about how we planted more trees than we will ever need in our life for building houses and for toilet paper in the bathroom. After we were done our walk, they were begging, how soon can they plant trees? I got elected, so I move over a little closer here, and our Chamber of Commerce was talking to me about climate change, and they introduced me to some illustrious professor who gave me a little challenge because he could clearly see that I didn't really understand too much about any of that. And he asked me to go out to Vancouver. And when I went out to Vancouver, I met people that are much like what I have met over the past 2 days here. Very committed, spending a lot of time on this and trying to advocate and educate. And that's called Renewable Cities out in Vancouver. And when I was there, I met their mayor, and he challenged me in such a way that the blinders came off. When I went back to my city, I saw amazing people doing amazing things. So we started a committee, put everyone together, scientists and bankers and industrialists and farmers and politicians and bureaucrats, to talk about the goal. Now, at that exact same point in time, the world's largest automobile manufacturer was establishing their own goal. And the timing was just off by a few weeks, but Toyota set a renewable energy goal of 2050, and Oxford County unanimously set that same goal. So we took another step forward towards this goal over here, 2050, and we're going to help the planet. As the committee started working through things, we saw easy, quick wins that we could do. I mentioned a few yesterday, I'll mention a few more today. I started driving an electric car, and when I'd go to community events, rather than parking in the back 40, I'd pull up over the curb and park right by the front doors, and I'd pop the hood and leave the keys in the car and let people look at it while I was at that event. people started to talk. They'd be talking at the coffee shop about this thing gets this many kilometers, or down here miles, for this much electricity. That's way cheaper than gasoline. To keep that conversation going, it's all these little steps. We have a building code. Our building code was nowhere near as what California has done in advancing the building code. But what we did, we talked to our local builders and said, what can you do as a selling feature to bridge that gap? We're not asking you to make a net zero passive house today. That's what's going to be happening in the future. But in the meantime, what can you do with that standard construction home to help save those homeowners on their energy and put us closer to this goal? So that takes us another step along the way. Then we get into our policy and government. We say from now on, all those affordable housing units have to be that net zero so that the people have a higher quality of life. Then we renew our transit and we extend our hours so more people can get to work. We do all these little steps. We put bike lanes in. Something as simple as a bike lane. I see bike lanes all through the community here. What a great thing. All of these little steps along the way. Having collaboration though, that's what's helped us take all of these steps. Each time when we think, okay, has someone else done this before? We want to start looking at our capital tendering, making sure that it takes into account operational costs. Because when politicians look at what it's going to cost to put that new chiller unit in that arena, they'll go with the lowest price. They want to get reelected. But if in that report it says, well, this one that costs more over a 10-year period is going to cost less to operate, politicians have the ammunition they need to defend those decisions to the public. We have another step forward towards that goal. It's only been a few years since we set that goal, but with the collaboration and help from people that are here in this room, like Stephen Strong, efficiency, 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 efficiency as the main part of the formula for having a success. And I look back where we started before, just a few years ago. People would have said, you're crazy setting this goal for 2050. And here I am, and we just keep inching towards it. Not every decision we make is going to be the right decision. Not every technology that's out there is going to be the right technology. Toyota's plan, I don't know if anyone has read through their document, it's very thick. You can also read through the County of Oxford's. We call ours a draft document. It's never complete because people continue to help add resources to it and new ideas. Toyota's document says, here are all the technologies and all the steps that we can take that we know about right now. And 50% of the equation is the stuff that the next generation of engineers is going to develop, stuff that we can't even imagine. So they know 2050 is a long way off, but if everybody keeps looking towards that goal, taking one step closer, you're eventually going to reach that goal. One of the things I really want to stress today is for everybody that's here. If you leave here today and say that was a great conference and you put some of this material on the shelf and we don't see you till next year, it wasn't a success. You need to leave here today and say, what am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do next week? Who am I going to follow up with? How soon can I look at that newest report? When am I going to read Toyota's plan? When am I going to read that plan from that mayor with the long hair in the picture and send him my ideas on what we can do? I mentioned it yesterday as well about the cities here helping each other and twinning with each other and the counties on this massive project. And it was so great to hear that announcement before lunch today. And all of you need to be really proud of that document and make sure you get the right people on, what do you call that? Is it a committee? Leadership council. Limited to 12 people, but I'm sure you'll accept more resources from others. And that's the big thing for me, those resources. So I encourage all of you, take a look at Renewable Cities. And it brings people in from all over the world. It's happening the end of May in Vancouver, so not that far north. It's a lot further distance for me to go from Woodstock to Vancouver than you here in Southern California going up to Vancouver. And you need to be there so that you can share what you've learned already with other counterparts so that we can all continue to get towards that goal. And then eventually we'll all be behind this podium saying, wow, it's a good thing we started that journey together.
So the main takeaway from this for me is collaborative. And that's what we're planning to set up. So that's very exciting to hear that in this particular context it works. In many other contexts it will work. We're going to make it work here in inland Southern California. Next, I would love to bring up Professor Echeverry to hear his perspective on how to get to 100% renewables by 2050.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred. Thanks, everybody. How you doing? You feeling good? Did you get some coffee? It's tough to speak after lunch. It's not an easy gig, is it? However, that's our lot in life, so we must make ends meet. So I would be remiss if I don't tell you my little plug. Fred said we can talk a little bit about ourselves. I belong to a tribe of people that are trying to change climate change, prevent it. And all you need to know about climate change is that humans cause it, and therefore humans can fix it. And whomever tells you otherwise, it's he or she is not doing their homework. Or maybe they're eager to learn a little bit about this, because this is an important topic of conversation, much more than any other topic I would have to tell you. So we created the International Renewable Energy Academy because the existing educational facilities of the planet are not designed for the task at hand. No offense to the hosts here in the university. I work for another university and I've had this discussion. I'm a senator in the university and I bring that to the table on a regular basis. PhDs take too long, masters takes too long, and we don't have time. We need to collaborate like never before in the history of the human race. So that's my commercial plug. In terms of the key points, I want to highlight some key points. I've been listening patiently for the last 30-something hours, taking notes, dreaming about this. Imagine, you know you're obsessed when you're actually dreaming about the next day. How many of you dream about today? Right? So Rex knows what I'm talking about. What would I say to you? So I'm going to say four things, if I may. Number one, Californians, please, 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 pretty please with sugar on top, stay the course and achieve your targets no matter what. America needs you. North America needs you. The Americans need you. And the world needs you. So do not waver. Be strong, be proud, stand up and do your thing. Second point is please, please, please again, I'm not gonna go with the sugar on top every time, open the doors to the world. The world needs to come here to see what you're doing and make it easy for the world, because the world is in desperate need of inspiration. They want to know, people want to know, how can we survive as a race? No, how can we prosper as a species without destroying the only planet that supports life? So please open the doors to the world even wider than you have already. The third point that I want to make, and I talked to Bambi about this, is please focus more on community. Local community projects are essential to achieve 100% renewable energy. Without it, we're never going to go beyond where we are today. In the planet, right now, renewable energy only provides 20% of the energy that the human race uses. I'm talking primary energy. The bulk of it comes from fossil fuels, and you know the story. A little bit from less than 5% is nuclear power, and ask the people in Fukushima what they think about that. My point to you is that to go beyond the 20% towards a 100% worldwide, and here in California to achieve it sooner than later, you have to create a good ecosystem So community people can thrive and knowledge can be shared widely and mobilized. We talked to Bambi about this. The basis of success is failure. If you don't fail on what you're doing, you have no idea how to succeed. So failure should be actually celebrated, and we should talk about how we fail. So we fail only once or twice, not all the time. And if you're an entrepreneur like me, you know, 8 out of 10, they say it's higher here in the US, but in Canada, excuse me, it's 8 out of 10 startups fail to thrive and become viable companies. Is that bad? No, that's just the failure rate of entrepreneurship. And we need to create ecosystems that are going to be good for entrepreneurialism and community level projects, so the local people can share on the benefits, not just on the burden, right? Because everything has a yin and a yang, and if you take away one and leave the other one, people are not going to be happy. And to me, the way to mobilize knowledge it's by creating opportunities of learning by doing. So you have that beautiful solar charging station for electric vehicles there. And I don't know the story of it, but I'm glad that it's there, and I'm glad that it's visible, that they didn't put it in the back hidden somewhere or in the roof where nobody sees it. And I hope students were involved on that, and masters were made, and PhDs were made, and local enterprise learned how to do the structures and so on and so forth. If it wasn't like that, well, learn why not. Disseminate that knowledge so the next solar charging stations can benefit the local community, the local economy. My last point, I promise, has to do with the experience of this brand new group that you've created and announced here. I want to tell you the story of another people like you, like Riverside, that a long time ago say, we want to do solar and we want to be good at it like you. That's the city of Freiburg in Germany. How many of you have been to Freiburg, Germany? That is good. You're lucky. Tell the other ones that haven't been lucky. It's a lovely, lovely city. In this city 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, the local people, they were gonna impose on them a nuclear power plant. And they say, nine, that is not good. Sorry, that's my German, it's really bad. And instead they say, we want to do solar. And people were like, what? Yeah, solar, no nuclear. So they stopped the nuclear power plant, it never got built, and the rest is history. Somebody spoke about Intersolar earlier here. How many of you know what Intersolar is? Well, it's the biggest solar gathering in the planet, and it began in Freiburg. Once Freiburg decided they were gonna go solar, they say, hey, we should do a conference and we should call it, Intersolar. So they built a conference center, which did only for 2 years. Then the conference center was too little, too petite. There were too many people coming. So then they moved it to the capital of Baden-Württemberg to a bigger venue, and they operated for a couple more years there, but it got too little. And then Intersolar did Intersolar in Asia, the one you guys have here in the US, and the rest is history. Out of the small little city of Freiburg, a lot of the know-how of solar has been nurtured. And I tell you that story because that's what awaits for you, Riverside, if you're serious about your effort and you nurture it and you put the necessary resources in the manner that I mentioned earlier, with a community focus, focusing on learning by doing and experiential knowledge transfers. You do that and you'll be just as famous as Freiburg, and the world will thank you for it. Thank you very much.
My takeaway there is, I guess, intuitive. Going 100% creates opportunities. And if we look at the glass half full instead of half empty, so we can go apocalyptic and tell that story, or we can talk optimistically about what we can create having the opportunity to deal with all of these different elements, jobs, technologies, the development of industry, the development of communities, and so on. So the next step that I want to take with this panel is for everybody to throw onto the table the organizations that you know, either at the local, regional, national, or international level, that are organizing cities and countries to go 100% renewable. Other one. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so excuse me, the mics won't turn on for me, but I just want to tell you the story of how this was born, because I actually happen to be involved on it. So there is another story that a lady called Diane Moss should tell, because that's one of the organizations that is going for 100% renewable energy. But the way we started our efforts here is one of the campuses of the International Renewable Energy Academy is in Denmark, and it's been there for 45 years. It's called the Folke Center for Renewable Energy, the Nordic Folke Center for Renewable Energy. And I got an invitation a few years ago to come to an European meeting of parliamentarians. I was the only non-European and non-politician invited to this meeting. And they invited me because they trust me. And the parliamentarians that met there were meeting, representing the different European Union countries to do a push to go for 100% renewable energy. And the parliamentarians that came were concerned because the European Union was moving too slow. Because like the United Nations, usually decision-making is for the lowest common denominator as opposed to the leaders. And countries like Germany, Denmark, Norway want to push the envelope, but other countries that shall remain nameless to not insult potentially your ancestors or where you come from, are dragging their feet. But if you're in the field, you know who I'm talking about. And out of that came a decision that we were gonna start with the World Future Council, which is a group out of Germany, an NGO, a very powerful NGO from Germany, to start a campaign worldwide for 100% renewable energy. I'm not gonna tell you the entire story, but I'm just gonna tell you about the tipping points because they're germane to the conversation you need to have here in Riverside. And one of the first things that we did is we identified whom should become the next organization to embrace 100% renewable energy. And in the negotiations of climate change, there is a very important group, umbrella group of non-governmental organizations. It's called the Climate Action Network International. And that includes all the groups, or almost all the groups, that work in all the continents for renewable, not for renewable energy, but for climate change. So we identified that group because they're an umbrella group that has worldwide reach. And we approached that group, say to them that going 100% renewable energy should be an organizing principle for CAN International. And to our surprise and happiness, they say, yeah, that's a good idea. So why don't you guys come to Istanbul, Turkey? We will bring hundreds of activists from all over the world, and you guys can teach us how we go 100% renewable energy. The rest is history. That was in 2014, and I can tell you it was a really colorful meeting because Turkey at that point was literally at the border of a huge war. And we had to literally dodge bullets, and it was like really a good movie. Had to run in little Istanbul alleys and not get shot. It was very cool. But we survived, and after 3 days, nobody got hurt, and everybody went back with very clear instructions to, from then on, to talk about 100% renewable energy. One last point of entry, which is germane for Riverside, is that in Europe, the movement for 100% renewable energy is being moved mainly by countries like Germany. And what they've done, and this is very useful for California, I believe, the government of Germany has seeded local organizations to go for 100% renewable energy. And there's a network of German cities, villages, cooperatives, etc., that meets on a regular basis to exchange experience. And that is led, in an organic manner. And this is something you want to think for your Riverside Solar Leadership Council. Because at the end of the day, we are as strong as our weakest link. And we need to be able to nurture each other's networks. And I could tell you a little bit more because the story is a little longer to the past, into the present, and to the future. But I see Fred already stood up, so I have to sit down.
Well, so that's a little bit on organizations. I was hoping for a list, but that's all right. So how do municipal governments and government policies, so municipal, county, state, and federal policies feed into the push toward renewable?
Well, I guess I'll take that question.
Please.
Although I might not answer it exactly how you're thinking. I think what we need to start doing is really collaborating at all levels to come up with a solution that works not only at the community level, not only at the county or the state level, not only at a country level, but globally. And that's going to take all of us working together. We need to get the policies right. We need to get industries involved. We need to get the consumer involved. We really need to start to collaborate broadly. I worry sometimes that we're in a bit of echo chambers where we're talking to ourselves and we're convincing ourselves that we have the solutions. And I'm not quite sure that we do yet. And I'm actually going to take your Germany example here and just talk a little bit about a cautionary tale that is, in essence, Germany. So Germany, similar to California, decided to eliminate its nuclear facilities and move aggressively in the wind and solar business, so in the traditional renewable system. And they moved aggressively, and what they found is that they were generating a lot of power when it wasn't needed, and they actually started and still import a significant amount of coal. And the government recently announced that they're not going to meet the targets that they thought they were going to meet. But it's also a promising tale because Germany is really looking at creating an energy infrastructure where things work collectively and together. And I'm going to tell about a facility I got to see in December that Audi built. And in my mind, if we're thinking about an energy system, that this is what we want to try to scale. So they set a power-to-gas facility right next to a biomethane facility. Now, this takes animal waste and converts it into renewable natural gas. And to answer your first question, what is renewable natural gas? It's basically taking organic waste, all of the waste we generate every day in our agricultural sectors, in our kitchens, in our bathrooms, and converts it into usable energy because it is methane. And so Audi decided to situate its power-to-gas facility right next to this biomethane facility. Now, biomethane generates in its production some CO2. So it captures the CO2 and pipes it through the power-to-gas facility. The power-to-gas facility then takes a small amount of water, breaks it into the hydrogen and into the oxygen, and it takes that hydrogen and it uses the carbon from that excess CO2 that's being generated from the biomethane facility, and it converts it into methane that then is injected into the system. So that's pretty cool. It then uses hydrogen, and hydrogen is just another energy source that we should leverage, we should use. Toyota, Japan is really hot on hydrogen. It's an important component to the overall solution. So it ships some of that hydrogen out directly. But here in my mind is the really cool part. the excess water heat that comes from the power to gas facility gets shipped back to the biomethane facility. And it helps heat the system that creates the methane from the decomposition of the scrap waste that is being methanated at that power to gas facility. It's really taking all our waste streams as well as our solar and our wind, and it's using excess wind to get that power to gas facility to work. In my mind, that's the picture that we want to start to create. And we're going to have to work really hard because it's not easy. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of collaboration. So I would just say, let's all sit at the table. Let's be open to new technologies. Let's be open to existing technologies. Let's leverage all of the things that we create as humans, including our own waste streams, to help make our energy system sustainable.
Yeah, I've always thought that it was a little weird that we connected our own waste stream with the water system. I'd really love to see that connection broken. We don't have to do it that way. We don't have to ship all of the waste to waste treatment plants the way we do and back into the water system.
Fred, so very quickly, Sharon, that's a great example of the know-how that those folks have. I'm not going to speak any further about Germany, other than saying that they're phasing out nuclear, they're phasing out coal, they have cap and trade in the form of emission trading systems and carbon taxation in a way. But my point to you is that doing it all because they're serious about what they're doing, like you are here in California. The concept that you need to be familiar with is the Energiewende. And if you Google, can I say that? Am I allowed to say that? If you do a search engine search for Energiewende, that's one thing that I don't think you guys have, which is a site called the Energiewende, Energy Transition, where they explain how the whole thing's happening in Germany. And guess what? It's an American that collates it. My friend Craig Morrison. I'm not sure he's from California. He may be from Vermont. But so here's what you need to know. Fred wanted to talk about organizations and things. Germany is great, but Germany is a tough example to follow. I mean, those guys are pretty advanced engineering, etc. But did you know Uruguay in English, one of the smallest countries in Latin America, it's going for 100% renewable energy? If you didn't know, now you do. So it was President Jose Mujica that created that effort, and they're doing it with wind power, and the new president that succeeded Jose Mujica, President Tabaré, it's going for 100% renewable. It's about this big country, but they're going 100% renewables. Chile, a country that is hosting the climate change negotiations, has a president that is true conservative, and he is going for 100% renewable energy. And I'll say one more, because two more. Did you know Costa Rica has been running its grid now for almost 3 years, nonstop, on 100% renewables? Hydro and wind. And that country also happens to be very peaceful and beautiful. And one last country, because I only spoke about Latino countries. Did you know that Cape Verde, which is one of the poorest countries in the planet, it's going for 100% renewable energy? And the country that is giving them the advice on how to do it, well, technically speaking, it's not a country. It's the island of Gran Canaria, where the Institute of the Canary Islands, the Technological Institute of the Canary Islands, designed 100% renewable energy systems to power the island of El Hierro with hydropower, storage, pump storage, and wind. Watch the movie in Netflix. It's called Islands of the Future. And the story of El Hierro, it's the most beautiful story you'll see. El Hierro means the iron, and it's one of the smallest islands of the Canary Islands. That's why Cape Verde doesn't want to copy Germany or Uruguay. They want to copy El Hierro, a Canary island that actually belongs to Spain, technically speaking, but that's a whole different story.
So one of the takeaways from what Sharon has said, and others have as well, for me at least, is there's no single solution. The solutions are hybrid solutions. They're different Each context is different. You have to bring together a constellation of resources, of people, of really good ideas, but it's hybrid. It's not a single type of solution. So one of the ways that you can do that is to collaborate. And I wanted to ask Trevor in particular what he did to collaborate from the mayoral office of Woodstock with the county of Oxford, because we have a situation here in southern inland California where we have the opportunity to collaborate, and that's what we're trying to do with this leadership council. And I'd love to hear your experience on that.
Well, thank you. I think before I touch on that, I want to touch back on the biofuel. We had a provincial government that wanted to completely get rid of all carbon when they were visiting the Environmental Act. So they were going to do an outright ban on any expansion of our natural gas grid in southwestern Ontario. We're the dairy capital of Canada. Got a lot of cows surrounding our city. As soon as I heard what was leaked in that document, I had to go to the legislature. And the story I told those members of cabinet and the Treasury Board was a simple one. What better example can we give to children in the big cities about steps we're taking to improve the environment than having transport trucks and tractors that used to run on diesel fuel from Saudi Arabia that got the milk to the grocery store so they could eat their breakfast in the morning, now being run using cow poop. A circular economy, a transition. Is it perfect? No, there's still carbon, but carbon can be used other ways. All scientific and above my head. But I know that we can't ban things instantly while we're still working on those transitions. For collaboration, it was so encouraging to see what was going on with industry and business, not just in our city, but all across our county. So what I embarked on right away was an education process for my peers, for all the other mayors, so that they had that same experience I had when I came back from Vancouver. The blinders came off and they saw the steps that were being taken. And when you see industry and business taking that lead, and when a politician asks why they're doing things differently, and the answer comes in many forms, but usually from a business person, the very first answer is, it's good for my bottom line. I'm going to make more money, or I'm going to save money. And then you get to the other parts of the matter. They want to leave the world a better place for their grandchildren. So then those conversations with the politicians around had to be about, what are you doing for your grandchildren that have not been born yet? You need to be thinking about that far into the future. You need to be collaborating. You need to adopt these goals with us. I'm not sure how we're going to get there. You don't know how we're going to get there, but someday your grandchildren will thank you. So we got to do it together. And it's that 30-second elevator pitch that pretty much seals the deal. So work on your 30-second elevator pitches with anyone that you know that has any influence over governance at the city level and at the county level, so that they can all start working on the same page. I wish I could say there's a magic formula, but what I did just seemed so simple, and it worked, and I've encouraged others to do the same. And I was looking up some of the other cities that have set goals, and since we set our goal in 2015, that was the second city in North America to set a goal like this. Now, since then, there's been city after city after city, islands, countries, and more to come. And your neighbors in San Diego, what a huge document they did with their climate change action plan. So they're working on lots of stuff too. They're not part of the two counties, but it's worth picking up the phone and calling them on some of those items as well. So collaboration is key.
If I may, I
Please.
know we're running out, but
Please.
I actually, what you said is important. And I want to make a shout out for a couple of industries that are helping on the biomethane front here. We in California also have an enormous dairy industry here. And so that's a waste stream that we really do want to leverage. And in fact, Calgren has started gathering cow poop and is now processing that, and it's being injected into our system today. And there's another facility that's right in the backyard here in Riverside County, and that's a CR&R facility that is taking the waste from its waste. It's a waste business. So it's taking the waste that it's picking up in different communities and converting that into methane that it either uses in its trucks. So it's got 400 trucks, and it goes around and it picks up the green waste and it picks up the organic waste from homes, and it converts it into methane. And so, you know, it's an amazing facility. I had the opportunity to tour it. So we have pieces here, and Riverside and Riverside County have a lot of the pieces. We in California have all of the messes and all of the opportunities that Germany has, because we have a lot of excess solar, that Canada has. We have the agriculture, we have riches, we have poverty, we have incredible intellectual institutions with really smart minds. So we have everything that we need to work together to come up with that solution. And we have all of the problems that we need to address as we're coming up with those solutions, because we need to think about the poorest in the state, we need to think about the richest in the state, we need to think about all of those that are in between, and we really have to think about how do we continue to take and make our state, which and our region, which also happens to be the largest manufacturing region in the United States, keep all of those things in our tool chest.
That's great. Again, one of the things that comes to mind is that many of these activities are, I was going to use the word siloed. So there are many separate activities occurring, and what we're trying to do with the Leadership Council and the collaborative is knit them together this way. So no more silos. What we want to do is cross-pollinate and knit things together. That's really, I think, one of the main messages that we can draw from this particular panel. Is there a final 30-second message that the three of you would, and I mean 30 seconds, the three of you would like to deliver?
So 30 seconds, it's not just cities, it's not just countries, it's not just regions, it's corporations. Please use your search engine if you don't know about this, and look for 100% renewable energy corporations. And there are the biggest in the planet, and they happen to be really good ones. I won't put a plug to any of them, except the one that is close to York University. I don't very rarely go to university now, because IKEA gives me free charging, free fast charging for my electric car. The cafeteria has free Wi-Fi, and they have zero waste. So it's in plates that you eat and sustainable everything. Why would I go to York University? Don't tell my employer that, but I want my university to be more like an IKEA. And anyways.
So my 30-second pitch is, one, let's all work together. Let's eliminate the silos. Let's leverage everything that we have in the state of California so that we can be in a model for a successful transition to clean energy, and that we are creating a system that is adoptable and scalable for the world, because we emit less than 1% of the total greenhouse gas emissions in the state of California. If we solve the problem, but no one else can adopt it, or use it, we have failed. This is a global problem, and we need to come up with solutions that can be adopted elsewhere in the world.
I guess I'd give you a challenge, which is join the Leadership Council, support the Leadership Council. If there's someone who should have been here that should know about the Leadership Council, before you leave and go home and have dinner, send them a text or an email and let them know about what is coming up here and the great opportunities. In addition to that, you're all welcome to come to Woodstock, Ontario, Canada. The best way to do it is to get a hold of Fred or Jose and come for some experiential learning and be a part of the International Renewable Energy Academy, the Canadian wing. So you could spend some time at York University and then spend some time in the county of Oxford and the city of Woodstock and have experiential learning and a fancy certificate that you can show off here in California. And if you don't want to come to Woodstock, then definitely think about going to Vancouver the end of May. And the workshops that'll go on there and the information that you can bring back here and help the Leadership Council with will be second to none. So keep up the good work, everybody.
So 2 takeaways, I think, again, additional from the panel. It's a bit repetitive, but that's okay. And my dad used to stress this: communication and education. Really 2 of the foundations of what we're stepping into now. And we will do it hopefully with all of your participation, and it will be a success. So please thank the panel.